And every team, every aspect of the team is important. And so your focus being the numbers, and I assume a huge part of that is cost segregation, and depending on the project and what the exit is you guys are looking for. So what I want to do, I'm big on education, right? Education to me is a chain breaker. It enables people to step their game up and to better their own lives. And a lot of education begins with a basic concept of definitions and terms. So give us a rundown. What would you say the top 3 to 5 terms are in cost segregation?
That's great. And I'm glad you're doing that. I totally agree with you. I actually was a teacher for about 15 years, and that's my passion. So I can totally relate to that. Let's break down some of these important definitions. So before we get to defining cost segregation, let's define depreciation. Depreciation, although if you look in the dictionary, may say that it means the devaluing of a property or value of something going down. From a real estate perspective, it actually means it's a borrowed term. Okay, depreciation, the definition is a tax deduction that is based on the principle that things go down in value as time goes on. So anytime you buy a commercial or residential investment property besides for your personal residence, you are allowed to take this income tax deduction called depreciation. And that's what it is. Okay, so it doesn't mean it's going down in value. It's just based on that concept. And it starts when you buy that property. So it is that's the first definition we want to know. What is depreciation? The second thing we want to know is cost segregation, which essentially is depreciation on steroids. Okay, it is a advanced form of depreciation. So instead of just taking your property value, buy a property for $1 million, let's say, and you depreciate it over a 27.5 year period, that means you take a little bit each year, equal amount for 27 years. That's depreciation. Cost segregation means let's segregate the cost of that property. Let's break down the components and put them in different categories and show how different components have a different value. So instead of lumping everything together, that whole $1 million into one bucket and taking a little bit of those deductions each year, you can actually put certain components that depreciate over a 5-year schedule or a 7 or 15-year schedule, which means you can get bigger tax deductions during the earlier years. So long definition, but let's just recap. Cost segregation is the process of identifying and allocating different components of the property to faster depreciation schedules.
So when you say different components, let's start with. I just want to talk about a couple of those pieces right now because I've seen your content on with Bigger Pockets and those guys and the other groups that you work with. So if I'm buying a property and I'm like, okay, so it's $100,000 on paper. Let's go and stick with $1 million because you use that example. So $1 million on paper sales price. And I walk into the property, is it all like one lump sum? Or are we breaking this out from, there's the inside and like piping and the appliances to the trees and sidewalks? What are we looking at there?
Yeah, you're exactly right. We're breaking down every individual component. So yeah, we're going to look at the trees and the sidewalks, and those things are going to depreciate on a 15-year schedule because they're land improvements. And there are, over 24 different categories of things that can be lumped into what's called land improvements, different types of concrete or pavement or asphalt or landscaping, etc. And then going into the property, we're not just looking at the whole thing being lumped together. We're looking at, you have the siding, you'll have things that are structural that are going to depreciate on that 27.5 year schedule. So we're going to identify those structural components. That's like the roof, the walls, doors, floor, windows, infrastructure like plumbing and electric. However, there are components that are going to depreciate on that 5-year schedule, and those are non-structural items. So you'll have lighting, carpeting, flooring, cabinets, furniture, appliances, equipment, window treatments, all sorts of things. And again, a couple dozen categories of different components that will fit into what's called non-structural components. So we're going to identify what all those individual things are, add them up, and then each one will be depreciated faster.
So when you say depreciated faster, are we talking about bonus depreciation? Are we talking solely based on the Tax Cut and Jobs Act? What are we talking about there?
So it's accelerated depreciation. That's what means depreciated faster. So all those things that I mentioned earlier, those non-structural components are going to depreciate on a 5-year schedule. Okay, things outside the property on a 15-year schedule. Once we identify what they are and complete this cost segregation, we can now take, let's say this $1 million property, well, maybe 20% of that, $200,000, is going to be in this 5-year category, meaning you can now take the $200,000 deduction over a 5-year period instead of, taking a small amount each year over a 27-year period. So that's not bonus depreciation. What bonus depreciation is in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and maybe this is our third definition here, bonus depreciation says that once you've done a cost segregation study and you've identified assets or components that depreciate under 20 years, so the 5-year, the 15-year categories we just mentioned, you can now take that as a lump sum in the first year. So you don't have to wait those 5 years. I mean, you don't have to wait that 27 and a half years. You can actually get a big lump sum of those accelerated depreciation deductions in the first year.
So we take the whole structure itself, the structural components, 27 and a half years, interior at 5 years, the exterior things at 15 years. And now you're telling me we can lump this all together and say, hey, in one single year, we can deduct 100%. That seems pretty mind-blowing to me. Is that?
Yeah, it is mind-blowing, but 100% of the accelerated components. So the structural 27 and a half year, and that's always going to be the majority of the value of the property. If you think about it, right, a building, the majority is going to be in the structure. That's still going to be on the 27 and a half year schedule, but everything else is going to go on that faster schedule. And like you said, take a big lump sum. It's a game changer. Take a big lump sum of that in the first year. And it's been a game changer since that was introduced with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. I think has accelerated the real estate markets beyond anyone's expectation.
So what are there a couple more definitions that you think would be important for us to know? So we've gotten at this point, we've got depreciation, we've got cost segregation, and bonus depreciation. I believe are the three we really have had. What else would you recommend we know?
I think an important thing to understand, taxes are for most people, when you hear like taxes, and like probably people tuned into this and saw taxes like, oh, I don't want to listen to this, right? People's brains shut off when you start talking about taxes. But if you're a real estate investor, you have to know that this stuff is so important because it's going to make or break your investing career. Tax benefits of real estate are greater than probably any other industry out there. And so one important definition I want to talk about just in terms of taxes is what's called your Schedule E, right? Which is it's going to be different from your normal Schedule C active income. Your Schedule E is going to be your passive income from real estate, from a tax perspective. Now, don't get confused to think that real estate is passive, because it's not. Okay, I don't want to burst anyone's bubble out there, but real estate investing is not passive unless you are literally just passively investing, in a syndication as a limited partner. You're just putting in some money and they're taking care of the rest. But if you own your own property or you're involved in it is not passive, as you probably know. That being said, the Schedule E, that's where it's going to identify or list all of your passive income, and your depreciation schedule, which is a part of that, is going to show what your depreciation deductions are going to be. I think there's going to be one more definition that we should talk about besides that, which is called real estate professional status. Okay, real estate professional status is a definition actually put out by the IRS. This is a tax status, which means, as we just mentioned about the Schedule E, your passive income, any income that you make from rental real estate, so whether it's commercial, residential, whether you're actively invested, passively invested, it is going to show up on your Schedule E. That is called rental income, and the IRS deems it as passive income from the tax perspective. The only way you can use these depreciation deductions is to offset your Schedule E income. Okay, this is really important. If you make, you have a W-2 job and you're making, good money, and you also have some rental properties, well, the tax deductions from depreciation and cost segregation are only going to be used to offset your Schedule E passive income. So that's really, really important. Okay. A lot of people think, I'm going to invest and then I can use this against my W-2 income and it's going to be great. I'm never going to pay taxes again. And unfortunately, that's not the case. The real estate is kind of in a different category as your W-2 income. So that's why I wanted to bring up this definition of real estate professional, because this is the one exception to that rule that I just laid out.